AI is rapidly advancing. You can change faces, change voices. Feel like it could eventually end up cutting a whole film. At the same time, do we really want that? With the possibility of AI taking over video editing tasks, do you believe AI has the potential to outperform human video editors? And do you foresee any positive aspect? I feel like for now, I see it as a very useful tool, just because I think it helps with like the very, I guess, tedious and like boring tasks like sound syncing, logging, and like all of that stuff, assemblies, because there are all these apps that can kind of just like manual or automatic cut, like in DaVinci, and there's this app called Heraize that I use to sound sync, and I think these things are very helpful in terms of like saving my time, and I can just focus on the story and cutting there where it's important. But at the same time, obviously AI is rapidly advancing. You can change faces, change voices. I feel like it could eventually end up cutting a whole film. Like I said, at the same time, do we really want that? Is it just making me as an editor lazier? Is it making me kind of lose my own skills, like the fundamental skills of editing, by allowing AI to do that? I think at this stage, I'm not sure if AI can really edit a full video front to end where it's the same as how a human can edit. It doesn't understand storytelling in the way that we do. It doesn't have personal experiences. It doesn't have that personal style of editing. It's just all based on what's already provided out there.
I come from editing as well for directing, but the biggest thing that I love when it comes to the editing process with an editor, I'll be there as a director, especially when we're trying to picture lock, like that last push, like there's a lot of, okay, let's try this.
Yeah, a lot of trial
yeah,
and error.
that works, but I'm not sure. Let's get a different opinion on this. Let's send this rough cut out to some friends. Like there is a lot of creative discussion that comes from building an edit. And then that's just to build the edit. And then after that comes the sound and the music and all the, color and then all those aspects of it. So like, it's such a collaborative process that it's hard to imagine a machine taking over the four people's, or I guess multiple people's, like kind of and input into that.
Part of the enjoyment is that collaborative process. It's talking and kind of trying out different styles before you end on one final piece. And I think it's funny because before AI is able to really take over video editors, I think the client and whoever is in charge needs to also be able to clearly and effectively tell AI exactly what they want. And people don't know what they want.
Yeah.
They think I'm a magician, and they're like, yeah, can you cut this? And I'm like, what is it that you want?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a guessing game almost for them, but that's also the fun part about editing, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, what's important too is that in the script phase, you're making a story, like you're writing a story. But then when you go into production, elements that are technical, elements of resources, location, things will change slightly. But then when you're in the editing, like, there is a very big chance your story is going to change a lot too. You're constantly rewriting a script, and that is not a bad thing. That's something you should embrace. And maybe AI will eventually be self-aware of that, but it's such a collaborative process. You need two brains at least to be able to like go back and forth. Does this work? Does this performance make sense for the way that she's acting towards that person? Like, oh, the prop isn't held right. Like, there's just so many elements that, like, what can it detect in order to be able to tell a success? Like, I can't see AI editing A Few Good Men. Like, that's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that kind of that kind of storytelling that just comes from the legality of courtroom, but also like the characters being so nuanced and the fast-paced dialogue. Like, you can't tell me that AI is going to be able to differentiate between like an auteur, like Scorsese or an auteur like Quentin Tarantino, because they're similar in a lot of ways, but very different in a lot of ways. So, there's just so much. I hope that it doesn't replace editors. I
really hope.
Because they're just as important as writers. I hope that it doesn't replace, producers and cinematographers, but we have to adapt. We have to not let it get ahead of us.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that you pointed out with editing is, can AI detect the emotion that the director's looking for that was in that take?
Yeah.
And I think that is, and I don't think it can, and I hope that it will never get to that point, because I think that's the beauty in editing and directing and acting, is when you're in the edit room and you're looking at 5, 6, 7 takes of this performance, you have the decision to take the take that gives you the most emotion and the most feeling. And I don't think AI is there yet where it can determine that. And I think that's great for all of our jobs. And I hope it will never get there, because I think that's the beauty and that's the art form. When you're watching a take that, happened on set, and then you get into the editing room, it's going to have so much more emotion to you. The AI is not going to know that. So I think that that's the part of editing that will be very hard to replace, and I hope never gets replaced. But then I see the more mundane tasks, like you spoke to. There's a colleague of mine put me on to this video that Film Riot did. It was about it's Wonder Studios, I believe, and it's a AI system that can track pretty much any character in any environment and replace it with CG, with a CG character. And it's very good. It's not amazing yet, but it is definitely going to get there. But it's like backed by Spielberg and whatnot. And when Bailey sent it to me, I watched it and I was like, okay, this is insane, because this would take so long to do. It took 4 minutes to like track a handheld camera and then completely replace it with like a robot. And it was just mind blowing. So I think those are areas where that's going to be really exciting to explore the possibilities that you can now do in a much faster time period. But at the end of the day, it's all about the emotion that you can convey. And I don't think AI will get to the point where it can make the decisions on what takes the best take.
Yeah. Human flow is like you were saying, like, especially in editing. I feel like editing is probably the hardest to have that, because there's certain flow, creative flow that happens that is very innate to our human experience that I don't think anytime soon AI will be able to do that. And I wanted to point out something earlier that you also mentioned, Andy, was that now we're back to using film more. Also, 2D animation never went anywhere. It's very much alive and very strong. And I think that raises the question is, why should we use AI? And if we're using it because the story or the production needs it, then that warrants using it. But if we're just using it to cut costs and to speed up the process, then that's when it's going to be hurtful to the industry, I guess. And it's like, because you have films that are made in 2D and they're done in 2D because why they asked the question before they made it, and it was like, why should we do it in 3D or why should we do it in 2D? And the story, the art style, and the creative process informed their decision. And I think moving forward, AI is going to be sort of that same tool. Like, why should we use it? Why do I need it in this particular project?
Mm-hmm. I agree. I also was just thinking in my head, I'm like, would a film like Whiplash would be edited by AI? Like
dragging
films that depend on or the editing of music, when music is such an integral part of that film, like it's hard to identify a style and, like approach to the creativity of a film, like when AI is taking control of that. Like, you watch Whiplash and you're like, that's amazing, but you were not going to get that from a computer, because like it's an instinct that that director had to be like, no, I want it cut here, and then we're going to put this shot in that's just going to give us this emotion, boom boom. And like you see that constantly, because he's grown from that to Babylon. Like, there's so much that person, that creative has gone through in his experience as a storyteller, that he's been able to tell a different story each time in a different way. AI like, how do we know they're not going to, because they've used formulas, like, how do we know they're not going to be able to be more original?